Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into a full review and summary of Daniel Coyle's fantastic book, The Culture Code. We're going to unpack the hard science behind what actually makes deeply connected teams tick. Whether you're running a massive Fortune 500 company, managing a scrappy little startup, or honestly, just trying to get your local community group to function better, the insights from this book give you a literal blueprint for skyrocketing your team's performance. So let's just jump right in and see how this all works.
You know that feeling when you step into a really great team culture? There's an actual profound psychological shift that happens in your brain. In a typical, kind of stressful environment, your brain naturally defaults to defense mode. You act like a scared guard dog, barking at social threats, obsessing over your own status, and above all else, just trying not to look stupid. But Coyle found that when you enter a highly effective culture, your brain completely switches gears. You transform into a wolf in a pack, entirely focused on hunting down a target together. Your internal monologue shifts from, I need to protect myself, to, I'm going to do absolutely everything I can to help us win.
And to put into perspective just how powerful that psychological switch truly is, let's talk about the San Antonio Spurs. They are widely regarded as one of the most successful teams in American sports history. Over 18 seasons, the Spurs won a staggering 117 more games than other NBA teams who had players of the exact same individual skill level. Think about that for a second. It wasn't that they had fundamentally better players on paper, it's that they leveraged a very specific culture code to amplify their collective skill and just completely shatter all statistical expectations.
So how do they actually pull this off? Well, Coyle distills this winning culture down to three vital pillars. Number one, you belong. Number two, creating a safe space. And number three, establishing a shared purpose.
Let's kick things off with Pillar 1, You Belong, which is all about creating energy and a future orientation.
To see what this looks like in the real world, we go right back to Spurs coach Greg Popovich. The guy is a master at actively building the sense of family. He's constantly sparking energetic, personalized conversations with his players. For instance, picture this. The team has a really bad loss, and guard Marco Bellinelli had multiple costly turnovers. You'd think the coach would be absolutely furious the next day, right? But instead, Popovich walks into practice surprisingly upbeat. He chats with each player one-on-one, often in their native languages. When he gets to Bellinelli, he smiles, they joke around, and then they literally engage in a mock wrestling match for a few seconds. It completely reset the tension. That is a massive belonging cue, proving that, hey, we're still family even after you mess up.
We see a really similar, kind of crazy strategy in baseball. Chicago Cubs manager Joe Maddon had a totally unique way of dealing with players who broke team rules. He'd call them into his office and have them draw a slip of paper out of a jar. Written on that paper was the name of a specific, usually expensive wine. The player then had to go buy that exact bottle, bring it back, and the two of them would sit and drink it together. I know, it sounds completely backwards for punishment, but it's actually brilliant. Because as Coyle points out, absolutely nothing says you belong here more than making someone feel valued immediately after they make a mistake.
So what about when you have to give tough feedback? This sense of belonging is perfectly cemented using a tool researchers call magical feedback. If you want to give a harsh critique that actually builds connection instead of putting someone on the defensive, use this exact framing. I'm being critical because I have very high expectations for you and this team, and I believe you can achieve them. Delivering that face-to-face signals to the person that they're part of an elite group, and more importantly, that you deeply believe they have a future there.
All right, moving right along to Pillar 2, safe to speak up, which means demanding honest input. This next example is intense. Dave Cooper, a leader within Navy SEAL Team 6, knew that if his guys were intimidated by his rank, it could literally get them killed. So to test new recruits, he'd give them a scenario. He'd say, if you see me standing next to a window in a hostile urban environment with snipers, what are you going to do? He'd let them sweat for a second, thinking about his rank, and then he'd break the silence. I hope you'd tell me to get the fuck away from it. He explicitly trained his team to completely ignore his authority and forcefully speak up if they saw a problem, because their survival depended on that level of radical honesty.
And Cooper reinforced this safety net during their after-action reviews right after a mission. They'd walk through the operation chronologically. But here's the secret sauce. As the leader, Cooper would purposefully point out his own errors first. He'd say something like, yeah, I completely screwed that part up. By falling on his sword right out of the gate, he opened the door for everyone else. It made it totally safe for the rest of the team to own their mistakes without fear, which drastically improved their performance for the next jump.
And hey, you don't need to be dodging bullets to use this. Even Steve Jobs, a guy pretty famous for having a demanding, massive ego, used this exact tactic with his executive team. When pitching a new product, he'd often kick off the meeting by saying, here's a dopey idea. By intentionally downplaying his own brilliance and showing a little humility, he was sending a loud and clear signal. I desperately need you guys to speak up, poke holes in this, and make it better.
Which brings us to Pillar 3. We have a purpose, which is all about continuously broadcasting the why. Listen, high-performing cultures don't just bury their mission statement in some dusty onboarding handbook. They embed visual artifacts everywhere. When you walk into SEAL headquarters, you immediately pass memorials to fallen teammates and a literal jagged piece of shrapnel from the World Trade Center. It is an unavoidable, in-your-face daily reminder of exactly why they do what they do. Similarly, if you stroll into the Spurs practice facility, you aren't just going to see basketballs. You'll see a massive sledgehammer and a rock proudly displayed behind glass.
That rock and sledgehammer anchor the Spurs' ultimate catchphrase, "Pound the rock." Everyone in that building knows exactly what it means. It's a visual metaphor reminding the players that if you hammer at a rock 100 times and it doesn't even crack, you do not quit, because it's the 101st blow that finally splits the stone in two. And that breakthrough is only possible because of all the relentless, unseen effort that came before it.
And words matter just as much as physical objects here. Shake Shack founder Danny Meyer actually relies on repeating these deliberately cheesy, memorable catchphrases to keep his staff completely aligned. He drops phrases like athletic hospitality, which means treating customer service like a sport where you're physically hustling to care for people, or turn up the home dial, which tells the staff to make customers feel as relaxed as they would be in their own living rooms. Cheesy? Maybe. But these phrases act like vivid little mini-movies in the staff's minds, ensuring they never lose sight of the exact vibe they're trying to create.
So, let's tie this all together into the final culture code blueprint. If you want to build a highly creative, undeniably successful team, here is your daily game plan. First, you've got to constantly send belonging cues. Bring the energy, check in on people as individuals, and show you have their back, especially when they mess up. Second, share your vulnerability. Admit your own mistakes out loud and demand pushback so your team knows it's safe to speak up. And third, establish and relentlessly broadcast your shared purpose. Use visual artifacts and sticky catchphrases so nobody ever forgets the why. I want to highlight this defining quote from Daniel Coyle because it completely flips the script on how we usually think about this stuff. He says, "Culture is a set of living relationships working towards a shared goal. It's not something you are, it's something you do." Think about that. Building an elite culture isn't some magical genetic trait your team is just luckily born with. It is an active, ongoing, daily series of choices. So as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with one final, provocative question to chew on. When you look at your own team, your own community, or your own workplace, is your culture currently treated as just a static state of being? Or is it an active, daily practice that you actually do? What belonging cue can you send tomorrow? What mistake can you openly own up to? The blueprint is right here. The only question is, what action are you going to take next? Thanks so much for joining us for this review, and I challenge you to go start building your wolf pack today.